We had 8 Sankirtana parties going out every day. We would come back and then at night go out again. We'd stay out till 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, every night. And the whole spirit behind this, I have to say, was Visnujana. This person could chant Hare Krishna on a drum all day long. He must have been a divine personality, because I don't see how a human could do that. The people were anxious to go on Sankirtan, and it was such a wonderful sight to see. People would watch us for hours and hours and hours. It was so attractive. And then
but also because he touched my heart in 1972. By his preaching and by his example. And he was a very empowered preacher and dedicated servant to Srila Prabhupada. He was known as the Pied Piper. He was very charismatic and attracted many people by his kirtan. He was always known for leading kirtans and dancing through the streets, and devotees would chant behind him, and then other people would just kind of come in and cluster behind and follow. And my first contact with him was in Kirtan. It was spring in 1973, and he was visiting Boston, and he was chanting Harinam on the park in Boston. And I had visited the temple a few times, and when I came to the temple, everybody told me there's a sannyasi here. You got to see him. So I said, where is he? He says, out chanting in the streets. So the devotees immediately took me to where he was chanting. And he was sitting and playing the harmonium. And I sat down right in front of him. And I was really studying him. Because I think he might have been the first sannyasi I met, actually. So I wanted to know, what is a sannyasi? So I just sat and I studied and looked at him, the way he was chanting, and I was looking at his eyes, I was looking at the features on his face, and a very, very blissful smile. He would oftentimes chant and then he would stop and he would speak. But after studying him for some time, I looked at him and I was thinking, he's really relishing Krishna consciousness. I remember turning to the devotee who brought me to see him, and I said to him, I said, if this is what it means to be a devotee, I want to join. And actually I joined very shortly afterwards. So he has a special place in my heart because he was very, very much attracted me to Krishna consciousness.
At that point, Visnujan had his black nylon gloves on with little pieces of tile taped underneath on the outside of the glove, so he could just slip the gloves on and he'd have pieces of tile in all the places where his hands would hit the mridanga shell. Because, mridanga after a while can cut your hands to ribbons. So to protect his hands, he had these gloves that he could slip on and off that already had taped pieces of tile in place, so he could tap the drum all day without hurting his hands. And he used to play that drum like that and lead that kirtan every day, day in, day out. Between the street and the temple artiks, he probably led kirtan 10 hours a day in and day out. I'm not kidding. An average of 3.5 to 4 hours in the afternoon, an average of the same at night, and then at least 3 or 4 big kirtans in the temple throughout the day, Add it all together, probably 10 hours a day, chanting at the top of his lungs. And he never, ever seemed to be, tired of doing it. His dedication was philosophically based. There was some, it's possible to be sentimentally based or emotionally based only. Visnujana was actually very philosophical. He could give a good lecture.
We all went down to Hollywood Boulevard, and we used to chant in front of diamond gyms. So we would have devotees on both sides of the Kirtan party pushing people into that triangular area so that the sidewalk was clear, so the police were happy, we were happy, only Diamond Jims was unhappy. And he would have us in a half moon like this. He said, just like the eye of Krishna, he used to tell us. We'd have men on either side and the women would be protected on the inside, and we would dance like this. And he would stand at the very end of us, looking down the street. He can see the sidewalk, he can see the street. And we had a Hollywood melody. We had a Hollywood Boulevard melody. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And Visnujan he would be playing furiously. He said, we don't want any gaps for Maya to come. So he was just chanting, and we were all jumping up and down and dancing back and forth. And all of a sudden we saw Visnujan's eyes get big like saucers. And he said, Prabhupada. And he hit the street. Now, we were just looking toward Diamond Gyms. Our back was to the street, so we couldn't figure out what was going on. But we figured he'd seen something behind us. So we all turned around, and Prabhupada was there. I just described what we are. And Prabhupada was there making pranams to us. He had his hand in his bead bag, and he was making pranams. That he was so grateful to see us out there in this hellish place called Hollywood Boulevard, spreading Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan. Prabhupada was so grateful. He was making pranams to us.
When I would come down from Berkeley to LA to see Prabhupada, you would fall asleep in the Brahmacharya ashram to Visnujana playing harmonium. And then you would wake up in the morning to Visnujana playing harmonium. And you would never know if he ever even slept. I mean, maybe he did. I'm not saying he didn't sleep, but I mean, that was like how non-stop Krishna conscious Visnujana was. You sensed that about being in Visnujana's presence, that he was just an otherworldly being. To see Visnujana and Srila Prabhupada was the most wonderful thing to watch. And of course, everybody wanted to have Prabhupada lead Kirtan when Prabhupada was there. But Srila Prabhupada would always want Visnujana to lead Kirtan. And when they would look at each other, you'd start crying sometimes just to see Prabhupada and Visnujana looking at each other. There was just so much love, the way Prabhupada would look at them. You never saw anybody ever look at anybody like that. Visnujana would always be emotional, get teary-eyed.
Again, for some of you that weren't here yesterday when we were chanting, this is called mantra meditation. The word man means mind, the word tra means to deliver or free. So this chanting of Hare Krishna and other songs that we'll be singing are meant to free our mind of all misconceptions of ourselves and everything else around us. By misconception, we mean that because of our attachment for our body, we think of ourselves as being young or old, pretty or ugly, black or white, man or woman, American or Indian. These are called bodily designations. They begin with this body and they also end with this body. But the first thing we realize through this chanting process is that I'm not this body. The body's a vehicle, just like you may be driving in a black or white car, pretty or ugly car, old or young, American or Indian car. But you're not the car, you're the driver of the car. You have to put something in it to make it run, and finally you have to take it to the body shop to get it fixed, and then you have to get out of it, then get into another one. Similarly, this body. You have to put food in it, make it run, take it to the body shop, and if it's wrecked, and finally you have to get out of it, get into another or whatever you can.
Winter of 1973, Visnujana Swami's bus had burned down somewhere in America, and while Kalenda and the BBT were building him a new bus, he came to sail down the Ganges and do Harinam Sankirtan and Prasadam distribution, and he had a slideshow to show these villages. And Visnujan was amazing, doing kirtan through the villages. I mean, people were asking us to take their children with us, and they were just in shock. And we'd have a program every night with a big slideshow. I mean, and show them London Rath Yatra and San Francisco Rath Yatra. They were blown away. Their Hinduism was actually, spreading all over the world, because we were the first Western Hindus they had ever seen. And it wasn't just that we were a handful. We represented this movement with temples and festivals all over the world. So, of course, who's the person responsible for all this is Prabhupada. I mean, the villagers were just enormously impressed. Anyway, we sailed down the Ganges for 40 days and nights. And we got stopped in northern Bengal by a huge dam called Farakka Barrage. So then we took trips down to Calcutta, where we met Prabhupada. So we had some kind of, little camera with us, but somebody had a shaky hand. It all came out looking like ghostly images, so we didn't have anything to show Prabhupada. But when we were reporting in the room about it, Visnujana Swami said that we had distributed 500 sets of japa beads. And Prabhupada looked very concerned. He said, "You cannot do that. Now they think you are their guru." So he was a little upset that we didn't know these subtleties of Indian culture, that if you give someone beads and tell them to chant Hare Krishna, you've just given them Harinam initiation, and that's how they see it. So I think there must be a lot of villages along the Ganges where they have this memory of this bronze god from the West who looked like Lord Chaitanya and gave them initiation.
This is the special net of Lord Chaitanya, which has been emanated for the benefit of this age of Kali, which is made to make the unsurrendered surrendered. Not by actual force, but by the force of attraction. This is Lord Chaitanya's force. That his attraction is so powerful that no one can avoid it. You may avoid accepting Krishna as God. You may avoid accepting Krishna's Rasa Leela as transcendental, just as it's being done in India and all over the world. Everyone is thinking of Krishna's Rasa Leela as mundane, as something of the material world. So you can discredit Krishna in so many ways. But Lord Chaitanya accepted the position of a sannyasi. In this way he demanded respect because of his renunciation. Not only did he accept the position of a sannyasi, but he performed Sankirtan. In other words, while being a sannyasi, he performed an activity which ordinarily sannyasis do not do. namely singing, which is one of the things forbidden for the Mayavadi sannyasis, playing on musical instruments, which is another thing forbidden for Mayavadi sannyasis, and also this dancing, which is another thing forbidden for Mayavadi sannyasis. Plus, he ate opulent prasadam, which is definitely forbidden for the Mayavadi sannyasis. So Lord Chaitanya, although accepting the position of renunciation, he introduced a process for self-realization in the sannyas order, which could be acceptable even by a little child. Because a little child can sing, a little child can dance, a little child can play on musical instruments, and a little child can eat opulent prasadam. Therefore, although he demanded respect by accepting sannyas, although there's no way one can misunderstand his position as a great devotee and a great teacher, still he introduced a process which would attract even little children and also atheists and Gnostics and impersonalists of all categories. Namely, this process of chanting, dancing, and distributing prasadam. Bhaktivinoda Thakur stated that he was leaving this planet with his work unfinished.
Now let us finish. We are descendants of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Now he kept unfinished so that we shall get the chance to finish it. That is his mercy. He could have finished immediately. He's Vaishnava, they are born. But he gave us the chance. It is Bhaktivinoda Thakur's mercy.
Visnujan had asked Prabhupada on a morning walk on the roof of the building, how was Chota Hari Das delivered by committing suicide after his offense? So Visnujan had been thinking about that question probably for days. He said, Srila Prabhupada, can I ask a question? And his voice cracked while he said it. And I looked up because his voice was so emotional. And Prabhupada looked at him and he said yes. And then he asked him that question. And then Prabhupada said something to the effect that, yes, if a sannyasi does that, then it is better that he kill himself. And while he was talking, Visnujan looked away. He looked off to the side. And then Prabhupada said, but that is an exemplary punishment. It is not meant to be taken literally. And he stopped and walked on. And Visnujan never heard the last part of the answer. Something happened and he was feeling very guilty and bad about it. I marked, that's why he's been different since I saw him on the way from New York. He was pale, and he was staring off into space, and he looked completely distant and detached from his surroundings. And I had never seen him like that in years. He was always energetic, enthusiastic, had a lot of effulgence, and he was busy. I grew up with him. We played in Grandma's backyard from the time we were a year old together. He and I had a significant thing. We lived in the same house in the Haight-Ashbury. He joined 6 months before I did. If it hadn't been for him, I probably never would have become a devotee. The last thing Visnujan said to me was, whatever you do, try to do something beautiful for Prabhupada. I told him I do. Anyway, I don't see Visnujan again until the walk. After he asked that question, I marked, he's thinking about suicide. You have to talk to him. He didn't hear the end of the answer. So I'm thinking, as soon as I get a chance, I'm going to talk to him. By the time the crowd dispersed, we got down to the morning program, which was right afterward. I didn't see Visnujan at the program. He disappeared. I never set eyes on him again. I never got a chance to talk to him.
When my offenses ceasing, taste for the name increasing, when in my heart will your mercy shine? When, oh when will that day be mine?